Hello and welcome everyone to this week's episode of the podcast. This week we are sharing all about the rising cost of metals and particularly looking at the benefits to handmade jewelers of this changing situation. Now that may seem like a strange topic because I know for many people the reaction quite naturally with the metals rising so kind of rapidly, especially with silver and gold, has been a little bit of fear, a little bit of panic sometimes, and a lot of jewelers in our community have been expressing some concerns over will people be able to afford to buy their jewelry? Will they be able to afford to buy stock? All these very legitimate kind of concerns. But there are actually many benefits to handmade jewelers of these price increases. And so in the podcast today, we wanted to really focus in on those and share around them. If you would like more support around this topic, I've also recorded a webinar which I ran last week, which if you haven't listened to yet, goes into much more detail and covers both the pros and the cons and actions that we can take. So I'll put a link to that in the show notes so that you can get a bit more information there too. But today I'm joined by the wonderful Anna Campbell, and we're going to be chatting around the positives and just bringing that good energy to this topic because there are actually a lot of good things. So welcome, Anna. It's lovely to have you on the podcast today.
Thank you. Yes, this is. I think the webinar was really great, and I would recommend everyone goes to listen to it. But I was there watching the chat and seeing what was going on, and could see a lot of people really worried and concerned, but also, like especially towards the end, really happy about the kind of positivity and the message. So that's why I think this is going to be such a useful podcast for people.
Absolutely. And I think for me, like when I was hearing about the metal prices increase, my natural reaction was not fear. It was like, oh, great, that's a good thing in many ways. Like, yes, there's some challenges, but overall, I felt like it was a good thing. And I think for many people, the natural reaction is, oh, this is a bad thing. So, and it's so interesting because it's neither a good or a bad thing. It's just life. It's just a change. It's just something that's happening. And I think once we can reframe it and see it from different angles, we can start to see that it's a change and some adjustments might need to be made, but not have that judgment about it like, oh, it's good or it's bad, but it's happening and this is how we're dealing with it. Because I think when we're running our own businesses, fear can creep in very easily. And especially if we start talking to other people and they're afraid as well, and then it kind of builds into this big snowball effect. Although that does seem to be calming down now, and jewelers do seem to be kind of getting on board with like, oh, great, how can I make some little adaptations and make a real difference with my business? And the main message, which I shared in the session, was keep calm and carry on. It's all going to be okay. And actually, a lot of the things that we're worried about are things that might happen in the future. So it's speculation and it's fear is often based on the future, isn't it? And what we predict is going to happen. But actually, things are okay right now. Everything's okay. So it's always good to remind ourselves and kind of keep calm and then focus on, okay, how can we make the best of what's happening in this situation?
Mhm.
So let's get stuck into it. There's seven main points that we want to talk about. So the first one is good news with the prices increasing. And just to mention, in terms of the price increase, both silver and gold have gone up by approximately 50% since this time last year, which is a significant increase. So it's not, what we're not saying is this doesn't matter, nothing matters, don't worry about anything. Although maybe the last sentence is true, but it is a significant change, which means we do need to be thoughtful about our strategies in our business and how we can adapt and make sure that we're kind of working to our strengths rather than playing to the weaknesses. So the first good news is that the inherent value of what you make has gone up. So gold and silver are a great investment for your customers. So not only are they buying a piece of jewelry, which is great and they love it and they want it, But if they're buying it now, especially if it's like an heirloom piece of jewelry, we don't know what's going to happen. Of course, we can't predict the future, but potentially in 5 years, 10 years, 20 years' time, it's going to be worth a lot more. So, whereas if you buy maybe a pot now, unless it's by a special collector or something like that, it's unlikely that the value of clay is going to go up in a 10-year period. But gold and silver have inherent worth to them. So that is a great kind of standout point for your customers to say that not only are you investing in yourself now, but this is a potential future investment. And of course, we don't want to promise what's going to happen because none of us know. Like the economy changes all the time. We have no control over that. But gold always does well. And silver, since I've been in the industry, which is probably around 20 years altogether, including my making years, it has always gone up. I've never known it to go down, like not significantly. It's like it's always going up. So it's a great investment. Anna, I don't know if you have any thoughts around this point of the inherent value of what we're making.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point to make. You think about the other kinds of things that you go out and buy, whether it's like you say, like a vase or a pot or food or I don't know, like a mobile phone or something like that. Generally the value of that is going to go down quite substantially, and but actually with our jewelry, that's not the case. Like you say, it has that inherent value, and I think that's it's not quite completely unique, I'm sure, but it's pretty unique in terms of what people are selling generally out there in the world. And so, we're creating these beautiful wearable art forms um, from these precious metals. So we're taking the metal itself and doing something unique and exciting with it. So I think that is a great benefit to remember, and to remember that it is actually something that the public know about. They know that gold and silver have value. They understand that. They may not understand it in the same way as jewelers we do, but they do understand that the the metal itself has a value. So I think, we're not having to educate people on that part.
Absolutely. And in many ways, it's more stable than money as an investment. So it's a pretty stable, I think it's the Bank of England, isn't it, that has gold bars. I don't know if they still have them there anymore, but in their cellar. And it's like, in terms of the economy, this is a great investment. So I don't think that's the reason why most people buy handmade jewelry, but it is a nice benefit, which is worth talking about. So I think all of these points, it's important for us to internalize them so that we feel good about our business, but also they're great talking points for a blog post or an email, or a social post to say, Christmas is coming up, buy yourself something lovely. And guess what? In another year's time, it might even be worth more than you paid for it this year because, the prices are going up, which means it's a good investment. So that's one angle.
Mm.
Number two is similar, but is another yay, is your current stock has increased in value. So if you bought silver or gold last year, and I definitely did, that I still have, that I haven't sold or I haven't made anything from, then that is worth more now, 50% more without doing anything. So again, it's in how you look at it, isn't it? And I think just, understanding that your current stock has gone up. And my advice would be to sell your pieces at their current market rate. I know that some jewelers have made the decision to sell pieces at the price when they made them, which might have been a year ago, it depends on your business model and your decisions. But my general advice would be to, if you're selling a gold piece now, price it on the gold now, even if you made it a few years ago. And that is going to increase the profit margin you get. That increase in profit margin you can use to help grow your business, develop your marketing, reach new customers. So it can kind of be fed back into the business as well. So all of the stock you have, brilliant news, it's gone up in value, and it can help create healthy profit margins in your business. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on this one, Anna.
Yes, it's such a big thing, isn't it? Because a lot of us are buying our metals, or we have a whole other conversation around scrap metals and things like that. That's coming up on the podcast. Spoiler alert, that's coming up. But Um, I think, that we have a lot of that already and we need to kind of think about how we're valuing that. Exactly as you said, I think this is a good time to be looking and reevaluating your pricing. And I can put the pricing masterclass into the show notes as well, because we have a whole spreadsheet around that. And you can put in the price of the metals now and kind of just quickly recalculate some of your pieces. So, and yes, absolutely, that's a good thing. Someone on the webinar said, "Should I do this before Christmas? Should I put my prices up?" And it's like, well, this, it is what it is. you know, um, I think, I think what will happen is that people can be very over explaining and also over apologetic about it. And just think about it, it's like, well, so many other industries are not. If they have to put their prices up, they put their prices up, and that's that. They're not needing to apologize for it. So, permission to do that, and prices up without apologizing or without over explaining as well. You don't have to. You can just put them up.
Absolutely. You can do what you want. It's your business. You can do what you want. It's one of the great things. And I agree with you, Anna. I think it's when you're putting prices up, do it with confidence. The chances are most people won't even notice that you've increased your prices, honestly, because that's just how the world works. Prices are increasing all the time for everything. And occasionally we're like, oh gosh, a loaf of bread costs a lot more than it did a few years ago. But most of us are not monitoring the price of everything all the time. And even if we are, we'll see that across the board things go up, because that's, kind of how it works with inflation and all of the things. So and I think it's really important to keep in mind who your customer is as well. And one of the key messages that I share in the session, which I wish that we could all really internalize, is that people do not buy handmade jewelry based on price. So just going to say it one more time, because I think it's important. At first, it's like, really? What? But people do not buy handmade jewelry based on price. If they are looking for the lowest cost or a low cost item, handmade jewelry is not going to be what they're after. They're going to be looking at shopping at a chain store, at supermarkets, maybe online. There's loads of cheap jewelry you can buy, and even like medium price jewelry if you're not interested in handmade. And I think as soon as we start to compete with that, even in subtle ways, we get into trouble, because we start to communicate with customers who are perhaps bargaining and asking for discounts and all of these kind of things. And it can confuse us, because we think, oh, our price is too high. Whereas you ask another handmade jeweler and they're like, my prices are twice as much as that. So it's really important not to compare and contrast too much. I don't think that that's particularly healthy. But instead, we focus on all the cornerstones of building a thriving business, which is building connection with your customers, making sure that they trust, know, like, trust you, these kind of things, making sure that they feel confident to buy from you. So having good reviews on your website, having good imagery, videos of your pieces so that they can make an informed decision, showing your jewelry on a model. All of these things are much more important to their decision making than whether it costs, £50 or £100 or 150. Handmade jewelry buyers are not particularly price sensitive. And if yours are, then it might be that this is the push you need to move into the next bracket of kind of purchasing power in your customers. So yes. Anyway, coming back to the original as we go off track, is that the current stock you have has increased in value. I definitely recommend increasing the prices now, because one of the questions I would ask myself is, if I sold lots of jewelry at the old price between now and Christmas, would I be happy with that? Would I feel like, oh, I'm happy with what's happened in my business? And most of the time we know when it's wrong. We feel it inside. We're not that happy when someone makes a purchase, because we're like, oh, I've let that go for too little. So yeah, it's having confidence in your pricing and standing by it, and focusing on your marketing rather than trying to cut costs is how we can increase the sales. Okay, Brilliant. That brings us on to number three, which is one of my favorite ones, which is your business will have higher profit margins. So, as the value of the raw materials goes up, so does your potential for higher profit margins. So, if you sell mostly silver jewelry and you move to sell gold jewelry, your profit margins will go up. And if the price of the raw materials is going up, your profit margins will go up. The only reason they won't is if you decide to undercut yourself to try and keep it cheaper for the customer, which I don't recommend, because in the race to the bottom, nobody wins. It's much better to have a sustainable business model where you're pricing in a way where you can make a good profit, because that way your business will still be here next year and the year after and the year after. But undercutting is very unsustainable in terms of a long-term business model. Any thoughts on the higher profit margins point, Anna?
Yeah, I think some of this kind of comes back to other, a completely different conversation around pricing, because I think a lot of the confidence around pricing is quite difficult, and that's why I think using these pricing calculators as starting point, as the lowest possible price you should be selling your pieces for, is really important. And I think it is important to start looking to that higher market, as you were saying earlier, rather than trying to, like you say, the race to the bottom, because you can't win that race. No one wins. Like, and it just becomes demoralizing, all of the work, all of the things, all of your skill, it gets discounted. And I think that isn't fair to anybody. So yes, I think this is an important one to take. And if you know that you haven't been pricing correctly, this is the time to take this opportunity to go, right, okay, now is the time. I'm going to take myself seriously. I'm going to take my business seriously, because it is the only way to have a sustainable business.
Absolutely. Well said. And I think you're right. One of the things that excites me about the price increases is I think it's going to force jewelers, in the nicest possible way, to price correctly, because you can no longer get away with it of just, charging too little for what we're doing. And actually for the industry of a whole as a whole, that's a great thing, because we're all with silver and gold, they're commodities. No one can get them cheap. You can't just buy like cheap silver or cheap gold. It has a price point, and we all have to buy at a very similar price point, if not the same. So it kind of levels the playing field a bit, which we'll come on to in a future point as well, around competing with the high street and these kind of things. Is that's going to be harder now. So I think that it's a great thing that we're all being gently pushed, or maybe not so gently pushed, to look at our prices, to make sure we're charging what are worth, to value our time, to value the materials, give them the respect that they need in terms of their price point, and to think more about design led pieces and how we can add value in other ways in our business. So I see that as a really positive move for the industry, because we're moving away from looking at just the cost of the metal and thinking about handmade jewelry as an experience as a whole, and how it can be enriched and how it can be wonderful for both the person making and selling and the customer. And it's not cheap, and it shouldn't be. And if someone's looking for that, then there's lots of places they can go. But this is where you go when you have some money to spend and you want a luxury item. Handmade jewelry is a luxury item. So it's how can we help you invest in that in the best way and support that experience. Um, and the example I gave in the session last night, just to kind of explain the profit margin point a little bit more, is imagine that you're a knitter and you're knitting a jumper or a sweater, and the raw materials are not that high. So I'd say, I mean, I don't knit, so I don't know. So apologies if I get this wrong, but I'm going to say £50 budget for the materials. And let's say you charge £200 a day for your labor, and it takes you 3 days to make. That's £650 for a jumper or a sweater. And even though it's handmade, that is quite a high price point to charge. But it's very valid because it took that time and you've got your materials. there's not a lot of room for a profit margin in there. And it's probably going to be quite challenging to find customers that are willing to pay that amount. So keeping materials low is actually not helpful if you have high labor costs. Really, we want our labor costs and material costs to be quite balanced, because that way the profit margin kind of makes a lot more sense. Um, and I was sharing in the session last night, another way to think about it is if the cost of material of silver and gold was plummeting, was going really low, that I would be a lot more worried about, because we're then working with cheap materials and trying to add valuable labor on top, which is a much harder business model than working with expensive materials and adding valuable labor on top, because they match. So hopefully that helps to illustrate the point. So let's say you're making, on the other hand, a silver and or a gold and diamond ring, and let's say the materials last year cost £1,000 and this year they cost 2,000. At first we think, oh my gosh, that's so much more. But then we add our labor on, and if it takes us 3 days to make, like the jumper did, even if the labor was much higher, like £500 a day, we're still looking at around, £3,500. And you can easily sell a gold and diamond ring between 3,000, 4,000, up to £6,000 in many cases. So you start to see where there's a lot more room for profit when you're working with higher value items. So yeah, moving your business model towards the higher end really does help. And we talked in the session as well about it doesn't mean that you can't also serve the lower end, the entry level buyers, but there's other ways that we can do that, working with silver, perhaps reducing the weight of items, looking at mixed metals and how we can kind of create maybe more delicate pieces and find ways in our production to make adjustments so that you're hitting the entry level of the market, of the handmade jewelry market, which might be 100, 200, £300, but you're also catering to the higher end where people have thousands and they're looking to invest in something really special for themselves. So high profit margins gets a double thumbs up from me. Brilliant. Okay, our next point was that more people are looking to resell or repurpose, particularly their gold jewelry. Anna, I don't know if you want to talk a bit around this one, because it's quite an exciting opportunity, I think, for jewelers.
Yes, I think a lot of people are seeing the value that precious metals have, as you say, particularly gold jewelry. And people know that they have, maybe inherited gold jewelry, been gifted gold jewelry, whatever, and maybe it's not their style, but they still want to be able to wear it. Maybe, they'd like it to be repurposed or remade or fixed maybe, or there might be some kind of heirloom thing around it. So, you know, having the skills to offer that service in terms of redesigning, remaking, fixing. Again, it's around the value of it, isn't it? It's around people going, "Oh, actually, I have these things," and it has that kind of family value, but also it has its own inherent value in terms of, gold has a value. So having the skills in order to be able to offer that kind of service is a great thing, because if you can help and support someone with something like that, and you can make something new out of something that they have, then you are going to be their jeweler. You're going to be the person that they go to as well. So there's the benefit of that one sale, but then it's also the kind of knock on that goes from that. As you talk about quite regularly about people, once you've built that trust with people, that you're then the go-to person, and then they're you're the person that they think of when someone else is asking for recommendations, and that's how that trust side of the business really grows.
Absolutely. I mean, it's so special when you take an heirloom piece. Like, perhaps something that someone's grandma has passed down to them, and they love the sentiment, but actually the jewelry trends have changed and they don't really want to wear that piece anymore. And you can, melt it down, take the stones out, whatever, recreate it with their own design. I think that's a really incredible thing to be able to offer people. And you're right, once someone has that connection, they're very likely to want to come back to that person again. So that repeat customer kind of experience is brilliant. And yeah, and I think, for jewelers who aren't quite at a stage where they can do this yet, there's no rush, but this is a good skill to look to develop in the future. Um, because it's a slightly different market for me. So when you're looking at gold jewelry, there's a bunch of different markets, but so there is like a typical gold buyer, someone who wears gold jewelry. They're not really interested in silver, and every year they'll probably buy one or two pieces of gold, and they've got disposable income, and they are discerning, but they're looking more at the design and the connection with the jeweler, and they often want a story to tell, like, oh yes, this designer, I bought this new piece, and this ring, I've just looked at it for ages and I loved it, or this pendant. And they've got a collection, of gold jewelry at home, and they're building it, and it's just what they do. And I think when you're not someone who knows someone like that, or you've never come across someone like that, and you're maybe scrimping and saving to make the rent, it just seems like a different world. It's like, how can someone have thousands of pounds every year to spend on jewelry? But there are people like that. I've met quite a few of them, and that's great. It's what a lot of the jewelry industry relies on. Um, then there are people who would love gold jewelry, but they don't have the income yet. Perhaps they're not at that stage in their life, or whatever. But perhaps they've been handed something down, and that's where this repurposing kind of smelting down really comes in. And obviously, they're two very stereotypical archetypes, but it helps, I think, in terms of running a business, to think about what am I offering and to who. And we also spoke in the session last night about giving different quotes for different metals. So whereas before you just say, oh, you want this ring, I'd recommend you get it in 18 karat gold. This is how much it costs. And then they say no and never speak to you again. You can communicate a bit more and say, this would be the ideal, but the metals have gone up. Here's some other options. You can do it in 9 karat. You could do it in silver. It's getting more popular. Those of you that are able to work in platinum, that's another option as well, because it's cheaper than gold at the moment. So giving multiple quotes, so that the person is empowered to make a decision. And they might say, well, for now, I'm going to go with silver and I'm going to gold plate it because that's what's in my budget. But one day I might save up to get, the ideal 18 carats, or whatever it is. So yeah, definitely kind of upping our customer service in terms of offering different options and helping people to make the decision themselves. So it's becomes less personal about someone saying, oh, your prices are too high. And instead saying, well, this is a global kind of change, but here's what we can do about it. And we can still make sure that you get a piece that you absolutely love. Um, Brilliant. Okay. So the next point was really interesting to me, because whenever I hear people sharing something that seems a little fear-based, I always want to check the facts. Whenever someone's saying this is happening, I always want to check, because I know that things can get a bit out of hand and we can let our fear take over and become facts. So going back to the facts, so I was looking at a bunch of reports around the statistics of the buying trends in both gold and silver jewelry last year and this year. And whilst we don't have all the figures yet, because it's a live situation that's happening, the stats are saying that people are buying as much gold and silver jewelry this year as they were this time last year. In fact, they say it's going up. Now, I don't know if the going up was that the money is going up or the volume is going up, but either way, it's going up. So actually, the kind of lie that we tell ourselves that, oh, the prices have increased, therefore demand is going down, simple economics, if prices increase, demand goes down, is actually not true at this point, based on the stats that I've had access to. So that's great. That's great news. It actually doesn't change. And that really backs up the point that people are not buying handmade jewelry based on price. They're buying it based on desire, based on the design, based on the connection with um, the jeweler, based on the marketing. And I think at the end of the day, if someone wants some jewelry and they've got money to buy it, it's a pretty simple decision. It's just yeah, I'm gonna go for it. So yeah, any thoughts on that point, Anna?
Yeah, I think one of the mistakes that we make is that we need to remember that we're not necessarily the same as our ideal customer. And so you kind of alluded to this earlier, but if money maybe feels a little bit tighter for us, things are more expensive and things like that, that is our reality. And not saying it's not. But actually, as you mentioned before, people who buy handmade jewelry um have got that higher income. They're not so they're not impacted by pricing so much. They're interested in handmade for the fact of it being handmade. They're not there to go, oh, I just want to get the cheapest thing I can get. That's generally not even in their thought process. They want the thing they want. They want the thing they want, and they want the story that goes behind it, and they want the piece of jewelry that works and suits them. So I think we just need to remember that, because it's very easy to kind of be stuck, particularly if that's not our reality, is remembering that there are people out there who are ready and willing and wanting to support handmade, wanting to support local, um but also wanting to buy themselves and to buy gifts that are made by women-led businesses, that are handmade, all of those things. So it's that we need to remember.
I think that's so true. And I think how we attract those people is by letting go of our own fears. Because when you approach someone, let's say I'm going to buy some jewelry and I feel really good about it and I've got money and there's no issue. And they're sort of saying, oh, yeah, the prices have gone up and I'm sorry, my prices have gone up. And, all they're talking about is this kind of the prices have gone up. You're kind of put off a bit. It's like, oh, this was going to be fun for me. And you're, this is not, I'm not in that zone with you. So actually, a lot of the time, not talking about it. I mean, I think it's good not to hide it. And if someone has a question and occasionally mention it, but to really focus on the things that matter to them, like, does it look good on me? Bring the focus back to the customer. It's not about the metal. Does it match them? Are they, what are they looking for? Why are they looking for something? Understanding them and shifting the focus back to the person who's important, which is the person who's buying from you, is so important. And I think once we can do that and we realize that that's where the value comes from for them, in the experience, in it being a good experience. No one wants to feel bad about buying jewelry. No one wants to feel guilty. No one wants to feel that they've overspent. So focusing on those positives. Oh, I love how it looks on you. Obviously, we don't want to lie. It needs to come from a good place. Or I think this one would really match your kind of style, and offering those good experiences to people, which I know everyone here is great at doing, but really just keeping the focus on that and letting go of what's happening in the wider world, because we don't need millions of customers to run a successful handmade jewelry business. We actually need quite a small number of people who we've got a good relationship with, and who keep coming back. So that's kind of the focus. So yes, I agree. And also at different times in our life, we will probably be those different people. There'll be years in our life where we're not even thinking about jewelry because we're struggling to make ends meet. And there'll be other years where, something's come in, we've got a bonus at work, or, we've been lucky in some way, or something. We've been blessed in some way, and we're like, oh, I've got a bit extra. What do I want to do with that? And that's who we're talking to, is people who are ready to make those kind of purchases. Brilliant. Okay, we are getting there. Next point, and I love this one, is that the price increase helps differentiate handmade and artisan jewelers from the high street. So it's going to be very difficult for high street kind of chains to do cheap knockoffs of the kind of pieces that designer jewelers are making now. Now, of course, they can do it and not in silver or gold, but that's a very different experiences. They can't say let's print off 100 or a few thousand of these in silver without thinking more about that investment, because the price has gone up for them as well. It's not just gone up for us as handmade jewelers. So I think we're going to start to see a real separation of people who are looking for the kind of businesses we've been talking about, that handmade, that experience, that real silver and gold, versus kind of plated stuff. Or just, kind of colored metal essentially that is going to last for maybe a month or two and then change color and all these kind of things. So um, there's going to be a real kind of separation, I think, between quality jewelry and not quality jewelry, because people can't just make pieces without thinking about it anymore, especially not at scale, because the cost to them is going to be too high, which is great news for us, I think. Any thoughts on this one, Anna?
Yeah, think it is. I think that is a good thing. I think people worry about, designs and their designs being taken and things like that. But you're right. It's kind of leveling out the playing field a little bit in that respect, and they need to consider it much more if they're going to be trying to do that type of thing. So um, hopefully it'll mean that there'll be like an even bigger gap between those high street type jewelry. I think there is quite a big gap, to be honest, between the high
That's
street
true.
jewelry. You look at it, you go, okay, and the designer, the artisan made, handmade jewelry. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's a good point.
Yeah, and I think that the experience it's just going to be even more of a separate thing, which is great for us. So another double thumbs up. We love it. Okay, last but not least, and this is particularly for UK jewelers, but anywhere that there's a hallmark, is the hallmark is going to become even more valuable. So I do feel like at times the hallmark has been a pain for jewelers in the UK because it costs money. We've got to send it off. You've got to do all the forms, all that kind of stuff. And it's a legal requirement for items over a certain grammage. I don't know if grammage is a word, but I'm going for it. Over a certain weight.
Gram weight, yeah.
Gram weight, there we go. So but now it really is worth it, I feel like, more than ever before, because it's your way of sort of providing that evidence, that almost certificate of authenticity, like this is real silver or this is real gold and this is the carat. And it goes back to that first point we made about it being an investment, is that even if in 20 years' time, no one likes the piece of jewelry anymore because of whatever reason trends have changed, the metal will still hold its value. Most likely it will have gone up. And the hallmark is one of the main markers of how we can know that to be the case. So I think that, showing that you're a handmade jeweler with your own designs, with genuine silver and genuine gold, is going to be something that really stands out. And again, people will make the decision as to whether they want to invest in that or not. And once they've decided they want to invest in it, and you've got something to show that that is true to back you up, um, I think that that's going to be a great thing. So, yeah, just kind of makes it all worthwhile, the hallmarking process, that it is now going to be valued even more. I think so. Um, what do you reckon?
Mm. It's interesting, actually. I was teaching a workshop at the weekend and I had people from different countries, and I had someone from the US, and we were talking about the hallmark, and they didn't know what it was. And so it's the process of sending things away and getting the piece tested to say that it is the metal that you say it is, so it's gold or it's silver or whatever, and they stamp it with the type of gold that it is, with your maker's mark and the date. So that's what the process is. And this person said, "Oh, but no one knows about that, do they?" And I was like, "Well, actually, yes. People in the UK and in places where you have hallmarks, they do know about it. They do know to look for that kind of thing. They understand the process, which kind of is quite interesting in itself. But it's It's just one of those extra things, isn't it? That it's like you say, it's that quality mark. It's saying, yes, this is what I said it is. I've had it checked, independently checked, and it's been stamped to say that. So yeah, it's being able to show that you're selling what you say you are.
Absolutely. And it makes me think as well about our diploma students and the fact that they're, completing a program and getting their certificate, and that kind of more verified status, I suppose, which I do believe that you can be self-taught and be incredible and that people will buy from you based on your jewelry. But I think as the prices increase, these things will help, to say that yes, my jewelry is all hallmarked. I have these certificates and this training. You can trust me. It's all about trust, isn't it? You can trust me to spend thousands of pounds with me, is essentially the message that we want to get across. So that when people are making that decision, they're not just going to Tiffany's, they're not just going to the big chain stores and spending their money there, but they are finding individual designers and saying, okay, yeah, I feel like this is a good decision. This is a good way to spend my money. So there we go. There are 7 main benefits to the rising cost of metals. And I hope that you guys feel a lot more positive about it after listening to this session. I really do feel that there are a lot of good things. Also, reminding ourselves this is out of our control. So we can choose to some extent, it's a mindset thing. We can choose whether we're going to focus on the good side or the difficult side. We don't want to ignore the challenges. And I do go into that more in the webinar. So do have a listen to that if you haven't already. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So do come and share with us over on Instagram or inside the Facebook group. Any positives that you've come across, and or negatives. We want to hear both, but we want it to be a balanced kind of discussion, because I think that as we all start to see it as a good thing and make these slight adjustments and changes in our business, we can all support each other to have an even healthier and more thriving jewelry industry, particularly the handmade section of it. So, Anna, thank you so much for coming and sharing some of your knowledge and wisdom with us today. I know that most people will know you by now, but in case it's their first time listening to the episode or the podcast, how can somebody find and connect with you online?
Yeah, the best place to find me is on Instagram. Instagram. I'm at Anna C. Campbell on Instagram.
Great, brilliant. And we'll make sure we pop that in the show notes as well. Anna is awesome. Do come and say hi. Let her know you listened to the episode. But wishing you guys the best of luck with the Christmas sale season coming up. We're back here next week for another episode. And this won't be the end of the conversation. We're going to be doing more and more things to support jewelers with whatever changes come our way. And just a final reminder, whatever happens in the outside world, you are the most important part of your business. You are the person that people are attracted to. You are the person that people are buying from. So all you have to do is keep being yourself and keep putting yourself out there and just keep going and you'll be okay. Brilliant. All right, we'll have a wonderful rest of your week, jewelers, and we will see you again for another episode soon. Take care, Anna, and bye everyone. Bye for now.